introduction of our esteemed panel. Our first panelist is Vandana Tolani, founder and CEO at Convanto. She is one of the best mentor, strategy advisor, and business management consultant with experience of 15 years in Indian and international advisory business. She has worked in Jakarta and Indonesia, helping various startups from diverse backgrounds. She is rewarded as Woman Entrepreneur of the Year 2021 and recognized among 10 futuristic women entrepreneurs in India. Welcome, Vandana ma'am.
Thank you so much, and it's my pleasure to be here with all of you. So there is one more milestone that I've achieved, which is about 4 days back. I've been awarded by Kiran Bedi as the best financial institution in India supporting startups. So that's one more. In total,
Congratulations,
we
ma'am.
have done 165 investments in more than 35 countries. So thank you so much for having me here. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Thank you, ma'am. Our second panelist is Neha Singh, CEO and co-founder at Traction. She has worked with over 1.4 million private companies and 855 subscription customers across 50 countries. She is alumni of IIT Bombay and Stanford University. She has profiled as Outstanding Woman by Outlook Business. She was also recognized as a part of 40 Under 40 list by Fortune India in 2018-19. She also got the title of the Most Powerful Woman as a part of Rising Stars by Business Today in 2019. Welcome, Neha ma'am.
Thanks, Shreya. Glad to be here.
Our third panelist is Meera Shinoy, founder of Youth for Jobs. She works on the policies associated with state and central government and has implemented those projects in scale. She is recognized as pioneer in market linked skill training for rural, tribal and disabled youth. So in short we can say that she is skilled in skilling and her aim is to able the disabled. Uh, Welcome Meera ma'am.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We also have Rahul Adhav sir and Shubhangi Thakre ma'am are faculty advisors of Bhau Innovation and Entrepreneurship Cell. And unfortunately, due to some medical emergency, Richa ma'am can't join us today. So I'll introduce our moderator for today's panel discussion. She is Jalashri Srikhande, a passionate sustainability and CSR professional with experience in diverse sectors in India and Switzerland.
This meeting is being recorded.
She works and guides individuals, professionals, and small businesses to integrate sustainability. Thank you, Jalashri ma'am, for agreeing to moderate this session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Shreya, for that wonderful introduction. A warm welcome from my side also to all the panelists. Hello, everyone. My name is Jalashri, and I will be moderating today's brilliant panel of professionals and founders to discuss around the topic of future of women entrepreneurs. This is a broad topic. Therefore, just mentioning facts and figures might help us understand the magnitude of the subject. But participation of women in entrepreneurship is multi-layered and more than just statistics. So in this session, we will attempt to touch a few key points, understand and learn from our guest experience, and pick a few takeaways which we can apply to ourselves and our ecosystem. So I hope you're sitting comfortably with your pen and paper ready to take notes. I look forward to an inspiring and encouraging discussion for our aspiring entrepreneurs. As usual, we encourage you, the audience, to write down any comments or questions to any specific guest in the chat box below. We will take these questions at the end of the discussion, if and how the time permits. So we request your patience. Let's just kickstart the discussion by peeking into individual journeys. Vandana, tell us why and how did you decide to found Convanto?
So Convanto happened 7 years back, 8 years back now, when I moved from Jakarta in Singapore. So I had my own family office fund there in Singapore and Jakarta. I was into investment banking. 7 years back, I did some investments. Then I decided to open my own advisory firm. Convanto's full form is Consultant Vandana Tolani. I see everybody as frozen. Am I still there, or am I also showing frozen?
No, you're there.
Okay. So that's how Convanto started, and of course we had a lot of bumps while we reached this stage, where now we have almost got 6 awards, 5 in 2021 and 2 already in 2022. So, but I feel there is still a lot. We have to still achieve more than this. It's still not enough.
I'm sure. Congratulations on your recent recognition as well. Neha, I would like to come to you next. Please take us back to your initial days when you decided to take the plunge and decide to start Traction.
Sure, Chalshi. So quick background about me. So I come from a very non-business, family background. So it's not that I've seen businesses, in my immediate family. I'm born and brought up in Bombay. My dad was a nuclear scientist. So it was a very academic, sort of environment that I grew up in. I graduated from, IIT Bombay, and then, moved, initially worked in consulting, BCG, and then Sequoia Capital. For me, the entrepreneurship happened as a result of a problem that I saw very interesting, and I wanted to solve it. So when I was an investor with Sequoia Capital, when I was investing in the private markets, I saw that there is a lot of information asymmetry. For instance, investors are looking at different types of companies, and on one hand, and the other hand, founders actually spend so much of time, effort in finding out the investors. And that information has to be more easily available. So just as sort of a Bloomberg has solved it for public markets, we thought that there should be a platform that exists for the private markets. And can we use technology? So I'm a comp science undergrad, and the initial thesis was that can you use technology to find out the information about private companies, which is very disparate, very unstructured, right? And can you help investors or anyone or corporates who are looking at this market to understand it and to invest or to look at companies? So it was more from the fact that there was a problem interesting enough that I really wanted to solve it, and that's how I decided to take the plunge and leave the job and start Traction.
We are going to touch that topic later on, which you've already mentioned, that you decided to solve a problem that you already identified or address a societal issue. Meera, I'm going to come to you now. Please tell us, how did you find your purpose to establish Youth for Jobs?
Like the others, I had worked for a long time. I worked in the corporate, then moved into business, media, and television. Then the government invited me to set up the country's first skilling mission. The government of Andhra Pradesh, the chief minister invited me. So I set up India's first skilling mission for rural and tribal youth called the 𝐸𝐴𝐺𝐸𝐴. It was really good fun because there were no cut and paste models. So using your private sector experience, I really built a phenomenal mission, and it was the World Bank money for the state. So the whole skilling policy, we managed to make it outcome oriented, being the first one. And after working at great scale, in fact, almost the entire skilling policy has been influenced by the work which I did. I moved on to the World Bank, the UN, across Southeast Asia. And then I said, okay, now the next avatar has to be entrepreneur. So what do you do? In India, when you want to be an entrepreneur, unlike, some of the speakers before me, I didn't have a burning problem, but I was clear that I'll work with youth and I'll work with vulnerable youth. Then I looked at statistics and decided to work in disabilities. I said, let me help companies to be inclusive and work with youth with disabilities, because no one was working at it at scale. So today, happy to say we are the largest in South Asia in this space. We work with about 910 companies. we believe a lot in technology. Even though I'm not a technologist myself, we are setting up the country's first, maybe the global first, AI-triggered accessible job platform for youth with disabilities to help companies, government, certainly the youth come on board and to get jobs and sustainable livelihoods. So it's been a good journey.
You mentioned it already that entrepreneurship is interdisciplinary. You come from different domains
Absolutely.
and you apply everything that you've learned along the way, your experience, and then you create not a solution, but you try to address a problem that you have identified. Let's try to
In
also
fact,
address.
Jalashri, I just want to tell you, you said something so right. I think what happens to many of us, a time comes in your life when, boom, all the various competencies you've gathered, can be used just for doing good. And that's actually a wonderful experience.
Yes.
Thanks for saying that.
When you're working in jobs, you already have a very set or a very defined role. And when you're an entrepreneur, you don't have a defined role. You just combine everything that you've gained professionally, personally, formally, informally, and then you decide to just apply it. And then the solution, not a solution, I would not say, because you're all dealing with systemic issues, and
That's
systemic issues cannot be solved. They need to be addressed, and you're all trying to address those issues. Let's also address the elephant in the room, women entrepreneurship. So, Vandana, coming back to you, from your investment banking perspective, how do you look at women, or what role do women play in the entrepreneurial ecosystem? And what difference would they make, or are they making in the Indian economy? Have we lost Vandana? Is she not there?
She's not there.
Okay. Should we move on? Shreya?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We'll wait for her to come back. Let me just take that question to you then, Neha. How do you see that reflecting at your analysis at Traction? Because we speak about women in entrepreneurship and the ecosystem. Please tell us the insights from your perspective.
Right. So I would say that, like companies have to be a reflection of how the society is. And, any skew is obviously going to impact a lot of other things, a lot of the way the company takes decisions, the way, for the workforce or overall in the business. So I believe, obviously it should be a good representation. If you look at it, especially in the, entrepreneurship ecosystem, there are probably three elements where I typically would track, what is the women participation or what percentage is women across these three. One would be just female founders, female entrepreneurs. That's one key thing. Second would be female CXOs. So not just entrepreneurs, but like, the whole CXOs within these companies. That would be like the second bucket. And the third would be actually the female investors, even not just from the entrepreneurship, but also from the VC, PE ecosystem, how many female investors are there or partners are there. So currently, obviously, the stats is a little, poor on all these three buckets. I would say a very limited number of, entrepreneurs, very limited number of CXOs, and actually probably much lesser number of female partners, across these three buckets. But I would say, the trend is in the right direction. So you see a lot more of, the numbers improving across all of these. And there's also a lot of good, sort of I would say, a good group which is being formed across these buckets. Like there's talk about female founders, or the fact that we are having, for instance, this session. So that is also very encouraging that there's more recognition that there is some skew in the stat, and that has to be addressed.
Right. As I said earlier, statistics is something that we cannot reduce women to just statistics, because it's a multi-layered issue, and as you rightly said, it's an upward trend. So progress is being made. That is something that we have to look forward to. Meera, how does this high-level understanding translate in your work when you're empowering not just young women, but young women with disability and from rural background?
Yeah, it's really interesting. If you look at COVID, what happened when COVID hit us was that suddenly we had to close all our training centers. We had in 18 states, 27 of them. But when the youth left, they actually implored us not to stop because jobs were most important for them in those times. They knew that their father, who's a farmer or a weaver, his incomes will drop to almost nothing. So we wondered what to do, but however, with great difficulty, we launched the online program. And it was simply amazing. What amazed us was the number of young women with disabilities, young widows with disabilities who were participating with a great desire to be independent and earn money. Um, they would quickly finish. We had two sessions. We had one in the morning, one in the afternoon. So they would finish their housework in the morning and log in the afternoon sessions, borrowing a phone because most young girls and women don't have a phone. Okay. If you look at it, if you look at the rural statistics, 33% of women are less likely to own a phone compared to a man. And also, they'll tell you very cute stories like, that they believe that this internet, they'll say, is meant only for men and not for women. That's what the men tell them, so that the women don't get this literacy. So it was amazing for us. And who helped us to spread the message was again women. It was the mothers, because every mother wants her daughter to do better than her. Okay. So it was for us, in fact, a very good learning when we realized there was such a big pool of women out there who wanted, with disabilities, who wanted to get jobs or to get sustainable livelihoods. So we put in now a very new, strong program for gender and women, and the kind of impacts which are coming out are really mind-boggling. So yes, I think that women, if you're a vulnerable woman, as I always say, I spoke at Berkeley recently. There are 4 burdens you have on your shoulder. You're poor, you're a woman, you're rural, and you are disabled. So when you make them economically independent, it's like magic. Everything transforms. And that's what actually keeps us going on the journey despite the various challenges we have.
Absolutely, absolutely right. We have Vandana back with us. Vandana, we're just discussing or addressing the elephant in the room about women entrepreneurship, and from your perspective as an investment banker or as an investment professional, how do you see women entrepreneurship and the role that women play in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in India?
So, women entrepreneurs have been on the Indian business scene for quite some time now. And I have seen that they have achieved remarkable success. For example, see 𝐼𝐸𝐿𝐴. Falguni has taught all of us one thing, that anyone is capable of doing anything. We just need to tap our potentials in the right manner. But when we compare men and women in a business world, a number of inequalities do come to light, especially female founded and co-founded startups, when they tend to perform better than all the male ones. And from my perspective, this shows that women are severely, underestimated by investors, though they have proven to achieve better results. And women have great, untapped potential. I feel women outscore men in most leadership skills and score higher than the men in key skills such as team, innovation, problem solving. And to me, if more women had equal access to entrepreneurship opportunities and were in turn able to start accumulating wealth, the gender wealth gap could, further begin to reduce. But I do see a change in the system. Yeah.
You said all the right points, and these are actually the pain points of
Yeah.
women as well, that lack of opportunities. And a lot of this has to do with the systemic, the societal, and the environmental conditioning that we have around us. So, coming to you, probably Neha, because you and Vandana, both of you work in a male-dominated field. Did you ever encounter gender perceptions or bias as an entrepreneur, and how did you deal with it?
Yeah, so I think different people have had different experiences with this. From my personal, fortunately, I've never had firsthand sort of a bias in terms of investors or perceiving you in a disadvantaged position or anything. So but I've heard different stories as well. That you are sitting in a room and the people are just talking to your male co-founder. So I've heard stories like these, but I personally have not had experienced any biases. In fact, I would say probably people are sort of more respectful. People do acknowledge the fact that there are very less females, so they are more respectful in general, when you're meeting them. That's on the positive side. I think probably the one thing which I found a little tough initially. Obviously now we are a large company with more than 700 people, but in the early days, when you are starting, and the fact that you don't have a lot of examples of female founders being there, and when you are recruiting your initial team and you're asking your senior people to probably leave their job and join you as initial VPs, I think that's the point wherein I have found some sort of second thought in people, because they haven't seen a lot of female founders. So people are actually wondering, are you really serious about this, or are you just doing it for a temporary time? So I think that, and hopefully more examples will make this point come out that yes, I want to pursue a career in that.
You rightly said representation matters, and all of you sitting out there are at that position. You are actually our role models, and you're setting good examples for all the aspiring women who want to pursue the same path as you are and you've done. Coming to you, Meera, you are also encountering a lot of obstacles in your day-to-day work. You probably might have experienced it yourself when you were establishing youths for a job. How do you help the young women that you're working with, and how did you yourself overcome that?
I think to me, the difference is that not so much gender bias in our worlds, because I think there are two different worlds. You have a Bharat and a India. You have a prosperous world and a wilting world. We belong to the prosperous world. So to us, by and large, I think we don't have too much of gender bias. But I think in the wilting world out there, where there's a lot of ability in the women, I think for them, that spark needs nurturing, because that's where a huge amount of bias works, and you have to overcome it. I'm not saying that there's no gender bias in the corporate worlds. Of course there's, and in the beginning we've done a lot of workshops on gender bias. So it is there, it works unconsciously, whether it's the bias against gender, whether it's the bias against disability. All these are so deeply rooted in our society that sometimes people are not even aware of it. I've heard people saying, "Arey, gender, what is it? Male, female, no? What is this gender bias?" I've heard senior government officers say this. So yes, I mean, yes, that exists. But I think the larger divide which we have to worry about is the women in the rural areas, because after all, that's 69% of our country, and how do we give them that spark? Because if you give them the spark, then what happens is that, you'll truly have 1,000 flowers blossoming, which would be a good thing to do. What do we do in our own organization? I've just come from a workshop, in fact, where we looked around us. Everyone was women. My team, everyone was below 32. Okay. And all of them are leading our interface with companies, with the 900 companies, and the only male there was my HR person who was feeling so outnumbered, So I do feel that women have much more leadership, much more empathy and compassion, which you need. And I think also they can multitask because much better because we're doing it at home and in office. So on the whole, I think we really need to empower women and let them dream as much as we can.
I think what you rightly mentioned is about the privilege that most of us are enjoying as well, because the generations before us, or even our parents or our mothers, have worked for it, and this is the privilege that we are all enjoying currently. And more power to you, and more such rooms that we can get to see where there are more women and less number of men as well in the leading positions. But coming back to your point as well, Neha, that it's just the tip of the iceberg that we see that there are less women, or less women in the leading positions, or even in the C-suite. Vandana, you mentioned yourself that women are dealing with a lot of indecisiveness, or they underestimate themselves. They have a lot of self-doubt, including me. They have a lot of imposter syndrome as well. How do you help your clients, or how do you mentor your clients to deal with or overcome this limiting belief?
See, it also depends on where the client is coming from. Now, we see that, we have started this pink and blue. Pink is for girls, blue is for boys, doll is for girls, soccer is for boys, and cooking is for girls. And so we have conditioned everybody around us, because we are not treating two genders as humans, but with colors and with these, skills that they have. So I think it begins from home. This conditioning needs to stop somewhere, and it is believed that women are, more into nurturing the family responsibilities. So sometimes many women, they just feel they have like a setback kind of a thing, and especially after kids, they lose a lot of confidence, and their focus gets diverted between too many things around them. They also go through a lot of other things, especially after delivering babies, and there are certain syndromes also that they go through. Now what I've seen is that most of women entrepreneurs that come to me for fundraising, their decision is being made by men behind them. So they go back, they discuss it with their husband, and the next day they come and say, my husband is saying like this. So essentially they are not allowed to manage the money.
Yeah.
So I think when they are given that opportunity to manage the wealth, manage the money, that confidence that they can do it themselves, I think that's when, that we have moved another step forward. Even in the VC industry, we have seen that several investors who are at the, decision-making team, their decision is actually not made by them. It's by some male who's behind them. So you will see very few women who are making their decision on their own, whether they are failing, whether they are rising again. So I think that is what is, we need to change. So we need to give them those arms that help them become more independent, and help them make their own decisions rather than listening to others around them. This is why many women entrepreneurs also are unable to move a step forward.
Very rightly said. Below the surface, there is all these systemic and historic also conditioning that we've had as women, because we are it's a choice at birth first of all, and then at the upbringing as well. We are treated differently, and that's when we're not made available with the right kind of opportunities, the right kind of education, and then of course, as you mentioned, the transitions with age, marriage, parenthood, and everything leads to women being not really exposed or encouraged to enter or being independent. What all of you mentioned there is also about women having a lot of interpersonal or having an upper hand in the interpersonal and soft skills or human skills, as we would like to say. And we demonstrably have a upper hand in strategy making or decision making, or we are more fairer, we have more higher emotional intelligence, empathy, compassion. So coming back to you, Vandana, probably, how do you think this translates in business or in day-to-day business, and can we put this to our business advantage? I think we've lost Vandana again. Okay, I'm going to take this question to you, Neha. How do you see that playing in the real world? Do you see using these skills as well when you're working in your day-to-day business?
So definitely. So there are some skills that people say that women are in general better at inherently. One is, just I would say communication. And by communication, I means that, if there's an issue, then they make sure that you are able to talk about that. If there's an issue with different teams, if there's a women there, then they'll at least make sure that there is, that there's communication between the two groups. And that is one of the key things that people say that female leaders are typically more inclined towards. So I think that is a very, and communication, I would say, as running a business wherein different people would have different views, and how do you basically are able to hear everything. I think that's an essential skill which women should and do. Actually, I do see that they take it in a very they take it as one of their strengths. And I would say second is probably just the moral, compass. I think the inherent understanding is that, women are sort of more fair, or more, they would probably not do, something sort of under the table. That's typically the understood. So in fact, even if you see in listed companies, for instance, we had just filed the DRHP on part 2, the listed company. So one of the things is the requirement is that in your board, you need to have also women as independent directors. So that's a requirement from SEBI. So that's a very interesting thing that they've made mandate, across all the companies who in the listed world. And thirdly, as you said, just the emotional quotient, just understanding the different angles of people, in addition to just the raw thing that they, what is behind, what is causing this person to act in a particular way. Just understanding, I think female are also, better at that. And I've seen people use all these three to their sort of, strengths as they are becoming senior in the organization.
Very rightly said. I mean, people management skills are better handled by women as well, and they're more ethical. So the moral and the ethical compass is set right then when you have women in your organization. Meera, I'm going to come to you as a working in the non-profit sector. You kind of are expected to have these interpersonal and more emotional skills, but does it ever come to your disadvantage because you are always exposed to such hard-hitting stories, such emotional vulnerabilities? Sometimes, does it ever come to your disadvantage when you have to take really tough decisions and when you have to do your day-to-day work?
Well, I think the way I lead is that I don't talk about targets to achieve. I don't talk about those things. I only talk about the values which the team should have, because to me, if you constantly have new people joining. So how do you embed that sense of values and passion which you have in the rest of the team? I think that's the burning issue for every leader, because people come with different competencies, different fields, all young, okay? And I think that is the issue. So therefore, to take those tough decisions, people know what you stand for. And so any irregularity, as Neha said, we immediately don't hesitate in sort of taking action. But mistakes, if you make, those are allowed. Okay. So I think that's what most women leaders, do. And I do believe that if we have more women leaders like Neha, like Vandana, you bring empathy, you actually, there's, companies who are conscious capitalism where everyone talks about leading with purpose. I think it's much easier for women to do it, I personally believe, than men. It's a very biased statement, but that's what I believe in. And I think if you have more and more women entrepreneurs, you would find that we'll have possibly a more you'll have more companies who are what they call the endearments of the stock market, not just because of their uh, earnings, but also because of the value systems which they have, with women being at the top.
All of you founders are also, or the CEOs of your companies, you're also the chief problem officers of your companies. So I have a quick follow-up question to all of you, starting from you, Meera. How do you not let all these heavy and really hard-hitting stories affect you? Do you have a self-care routine?
Yes, I have. And I think in COVID, it gave all of us a great time to reboot. For example, I used to travel 20 days a month, both India and abroad. But, you clearly cut that down and put a system into yours. And you found that many of the things which you could do before, by not traveling, you can actually do it much better. I think reflections, it gave you time to reflect. And one of the things which I do is after 7, I just don't think work. I do a sharp cut off. Okay. And I do the most mindless things after 7. It's simply amazing. Okay. What I do. And that really allows me to de stress because and not carry the problems of the real world into my sleep. So that I think is, a great side, a great way to be.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you have to shut off or turn off once you're home and just have that balance somehow. Neha, what do you do to keep yourself in balance or to de-stress yourself? What is your self-care routine?
So I'm probably, not a very a good example of that. I probably have like a to-do list for work, and I have a to-do list for personal. So, I manage the task both for the personal also with the same calendar, everything just as you would do for professionals. So I probably, not the good example. But yes, I mean, I do consciously, as any working professional, you need to have a few things to keep yourself balanced. For instance, on you need to have a good hobby, you need to be physically active. I think that's most important. So I picked up that I try to do yoga every day. I try to go for a walk, not 10,000 steps, but maybe 7,000 steps every day. And then on weekends I try to meet up with people. We couldn't do that probably for the last 1.5 years due to COVID, but now with offices opening up and people also coming out, now it's possible again. So that's good. So on weekends typically you'd like to meet people, your friends. So that's good. So these are some of the things that I do consciously. But I would say one of the key things is that as you get senior in your career, you have to invest time in health, I would say. And that's also, even in the company, we've actually had a different session for that. But that I've seen makes a lot of difference in your decision making, in the company, like how fit you are overall. So if someone has to, if someone is aspiring for any leadership, after you hit probably 30, before 30 you can do everything, but after you hit 30 you need to consciously allocate that 1 hour or 1.5 hours to health.
Very important point, as you said, because health, mental health, physical health, both are important to keep you going, and it should come as a ritual, as a routine in your practice, in your everyday practice, right at the young age, and which will keep you go longer and move forward. Vandana, we're just talking about how do you handle all the stress of your day-to-day work, of your day-to-day job, and how do you keep your work and your personal life in balance? Do you also rely on your support structure? Maybe talk us about to us about that.
So, I feel that your mind has to be in center always. And I think then automatically your health in the body reacts to how your mind is. So I definitely do my walks every day, 1 hour in the evening and 1 hour in the morning. I do my yoga. I drink lots of water. I read a lot of spiritual books, especially my favorite one is The Power of the Subconscious Mind. And I do something like what Neha does is my personal and professional is always on the calendar. So even for my personal meetings and everything, it cannot happen without the calendar because it's just so otherwise it just gets hectic. And I don't want to forget PTMs of my kids and other stuff and things like that. So everything goes on in the calendar. So that's by default. But then, of course, we get time. So when I keep my cool always, even if it's the most stressful situation, I don't react very badly or very nicely also at times. But I'm just calm, and if I have to react later on to something after thinking, I would do that rather than reacting to something immediately. So I think that's that's how I do things. So it's not always, that we have the support system also. Sometimes suddenly everybody goes missing, from the housemaid to, your office assistant. That day you just have to deal with it. So it's like that. And there are days when you are overloaded with meetings. There are days when you're overloaded with something else. I think I just take it as one day at a time. So I think that is what keeps me going on. I don't go too much into planning or too much into the past. I just move with the flow.
I think what the word which you're trying to mention is also agility, to be flexible and to be agile enough that and that you can switch on and off, and that's something you all three have developed with, of course, your background, your experience in this journey. But again, coming to the point of the support structure, all of you must have a support structure. It could be your family, your friends, your partners, and people. Somehow, when you're an entrepreneur, are at the center of everything, because as you said, Neha, you identified this problem and you wanted to solve it, or you wanted to address it in the best way you can. And people are the center of organizations, of businesses, not just to find the right clients and your right customers, but also to find your co-founders or your team members, for your employees. So this is again an open question to the panel. Meera, maybe starting from you. In the non-profit sector, you came from a private sector, you entered into the non-profit sector to work with the disabled people, which was a completely unknown territory for you. How did you overcome those barriers or those obstacles that you were confronted with? How did you make those first connections, first put your foot in the door and made those connections? What did you learn about networking?
I think the challenge of a not-for-profit or a for-profit are exactly the same. For example, when I entered the space of disability, I thought I knew everything about skilling because I'd done so much about it in so many avatars. But little did I know what disability was, We decided, for example, that we'll begin, whatever we do, we say we should do for Bharat first, okay? And that also helps us to give scale if we crack the problem. But when my team went to the villages, they couldn't find disabled. They would find youth, but no disabled. The youth had such low levels of confidence because the whole society scorned them. We couldn't get special educators. Companies came to look at the work because they knew me. But when they saw these youth with disabilities, they said, Meera ma'am, can you give us some youth who you used to skill before, meaning non-disabled youth, And then we realized what the scale of our problem was. And I think what we did was we kept looking every stage to see what is the gap between the youth with disabilities the way he is and the companies who want to absorb them. So we kept looking at these gaps, and our company services are basically meant, they are low-cost services which we do for companies and large multinationals. In fact, those services are now global after we went online. It's basically to help the youth to be productive and for the companies to experience the business case of hiring youth with disabilities. And everywhere we insist that the work is measured, and the impact is actually good, and therefore mainstreaming happens. So the challenge is, this is the way we learned it, the hard way. We learned it by making mistakes, but we work hard on building a template for innovation and scale. And once we do it, we just scale boldly wherever it's necessary. And I think that's the secret.
There's a constant engagement between the corporates or all the actors and in the ecosystem.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of give and take, so you understand and you keep yourself updating to the issues and vice versa as well. Let's come to you, Neha. How did you give us some, or maybe how did you find your secrets or your tips to develop long-lasting relationship? What worked for you at Traction? What didn't work for you at Traction?
So I think entrepreneurship is tough for anyone, so there's a lot of, learning or unlearning that you have to do over the entire tenure. And, it's never that you can, I think the only thing that I would say is a constant that, you have to keep learning every time. Like the way you would hire your initial hires is very different from the way you would run the company or spend time when you are 100 people versus, when you are 500 people. At that time, you would spend a lot more about thinking about organizational design or, how do you, like hire and identify good talent and, make sure that everyone is able to, do more than what they can, a little bit more. So I think the only constant is that, as your journey, develops, you have to be able to, learn new skills, and that is required at every, phase in life. And that's true for, entrepreneurs. It's true for senior leaders. It's very different the way you would run in the initial days, what is required and, what is required later on. And having sort of a good set of peers that you can interact with, having people in the same boat that you can talk to, I think that is super helpful. And I think people should constantly, look for opportunities to do that. You should never, sort of try to solve, everything from first, like yourself. You should do that, but you should also talk to a lot of other people because, everyone. If you talk to a lot of people, you'll realize that a lot of them have actually gone through the same issues, and how they have solved it. And specifically, I would actually add to that, being, for instance, women founders. One of the apprehensions that I had is one of the ways I have seen dropouts that is happening in women workforce, even in our companies, is like as we were discussing, when you have a childbirth, that's the time when the drop off happens, etc. So just talking to a lot of people and how they have managed their life, do that, I think that is super helpful. So I would say you have to identify what is the problem that you have to solve at each point in time, take enough help, talk to enough people, and try to solve each problem at a time.
Very rightly, you mentioned about all these skills which are required for an entrepreneur: continuous learning, being agile, being flexible. And this is something that you need, all these entrepreneurial skill set that you need, not just to become an entrepreneur or founder, but also which could be used in an organization where you're working in. So you can be an entrepreneur within the organization as well. I think we're just coming to an end of the discussion, and I cannot leave all three of you without discussing about my domain, my topic of sustainability. And it's about, I want to understand your perspective about building sustainable businesses, not just financially viable, but also creating environmentally and socially conscious businesses. So taking into consideration that climate change issues, value chain transparency, trust deficit, fair wages, etc. So maybe let's start with you, Neha, this time again. What would you like to say about how can our aspiring women develop and design and develop businesses that are not just compatible to the present, but also adaptable to the future.
Right. I think one of the things that people have identified globally is that the businesses have to be sustainable, not just, as I was saying, like financially, but also ecosystem wise. And, that is why you have, even in public markets, you have so much of people following or investing behind, say, themes like ESG, which has become very popular in the public markets and also in the private markets, because we track and we work with a lot of funds and corporates, we see that that is actually a big theme even in the private markets. So we actually, interestingly, at Traction, we have coverage areas which have, like high social impact, and because a lot of the corporates, a lot of the funds actually want to invest in these themes. So I would say that people overall across all these sectors have recognized that that is very essential for building long lasting businesses, which everyone around your customers, your peers, your interaction, your partners actually like for a long term basis. And now I think it has become very critical part across when you are building businesses. For instance, I'll give you small examples like in food delivery, people actually care about the fact that what Swiggy is sending, is it eco-friendly tableware or eatery or not, and people are actually taking that, and that you see from customers itself. The demand is from the customers, demand is from the partners, that is the business sustainable. So I think that has become now more of a table stakes, that you have to ingrain this or think about this across for anything that you are doing today.
Very rightly said. It's quite customer driven currently, because people, again, the businesses are, or the organizations have to be customer centric. Coming to you, Vandana, as a product market fit expert, we want to know what are your tips on designing a sustainable business, on designing a business which is, of course, which has a sustainable strategy and which is fit for the future as well.
So, when building a business, you want to ensure that you're building something that lasts. Before you launch, you'll need to make sure your product or service fills a need in the market. From there, you need to hire the right people, put the right processes in place, and that will help you keep growing. Planning well and putting in the work early on will set you up for a sustainable success. For instance, if you hire the best possible people to represent your company, it will help you, sustain your business for a longer time, because essentially the team also matters. And how you take care of your employees, what kind of people you are hiring. It's very important that your employees actually are a representation of your company as a whole, and it's crucial to invest in the hiring the right type of people that will understand your values and mission. And then comes establishing multiple revenue channels. So I feel when you're building a business, it's essential to have more than one revenue model, whether you're selling a product or you're providing additional services with that product, or you're providing support services for a subscription fee. It's imperative to ensure that there are few demonstrated methods that you can drive revenue by. And also, I think instead of focusing on short-term gains, one must focus on long-term successes. That's the best advice I can give, is don't trade for short-term gains. Go for the long-term successes, because when you have trusted associates who are not only involved directly in the business to validate your plans and vision, they can share a lot of good insights you may not see yourself. And I think it's very, very important also to monitor your cash flows. When building a business, it's easy to, want what you enjoy, the rewards of your success, but, don't stop monitoring your cash flow because of that. The time will come when that cash flow needs to be, go back into the business to grow. So I think that's very important. And I think one should never compromise on your values. one of the most crucial things for a sustainable business is to build your value system from the beginning. Values will set the tone for the vision of the company, the culture, the people you want to hire, collaborations, your product building, and running your day-to-day operations. And uh, it is the great values that build great companies, and those are the best places to work. So I feel this is my small take here. Also, our actual capital, is not the financial capital, it's our human capital, the network that we have that helps us grow a lot. So I think we need to focus on that.
You rightly said. I think it's the social capital that we have
Yeah.
to actually care for and nurture for. And values are at the core of everything, vision, mission, and at the core of any successful or sustainable business. Meera, I'm going to come to you, but with a reframing of this question. It's not about sustainability of a business, but also how do you keep yourself and your mind unwavered on your object, or not an object, but the vision that you have, and keeping your or your vision sustainable. And we would like your insight on how can you continue on your aspired vision without being obstructed by the naysayers, and without being, or when you don't have a support structure around you, how can you still stick to your compass?
Yeah, thanks. I think naysayers are there everywhere, and I'm sure, all of us face them when you're trying to do something new, when you're trying to do something pioneering. And believe me, I've sat in governments, okay? And if you're a private sector person in the government, there'll be many who tell you they've tried the idea before and it can't be done. I think number one rule you must learn is that if you really want to succeed and your vision is clear, you should have no ego. You have to really dunk your ego and just continue working. The second is that every minute you should remember the vision, especially when you face challenges. And I tell this to my team also. And our vision, which I've set, is that a job to a person with disability takes the entire family out of poverty in a sustained manner. Talk of sustainability. We see it every day. There are enough studies done on my work and any work to show that actually it happens. And what can be better than that? I tell them, many people get up to work and say, oh, such a boring work. But for us, that every youth, and we touch at least 14 youth every single day. So that's the kind of vision you can do. And so that's all. I just keep drilling it. In fact, when we had the physical classrooms, I used to tell them to put that up in the classroom so that they could all look at it whenever they have challenges. And of course, we have hundreds of challenges every day. So if you have that beautiful vision, I think that just keeps you going steadily on the path. And a time comes, Jalashri, when I think the forces conspire. So they just send people around you who make you progress quicker on that path. So I look at awards, whether it's the MIT award or whatever it is, where every time we win it unanimously, as just one more small little, flower on our way, which says, okay, you're moving in the right direction. Just keep going forward.
From these small signs that you are seeing, and those that will tell you that you are on the right path, and that will help you keep moving in the right direction. And as you rightly said, it's not that the 100th stroke of the hammer did that break the stone, or it was the 99 before that happened. That you have to keep going till that really happens. We are almost coming to the end of our discussion, and what we've all discussed about is women in entrepreneurship, about women in being in the leading positions. It's also talking about bringing a mindset change, and not just in the society, but amongst the women themselves, that they can do it, that they've got this. And we've also heard that when we go out in the world, the business world, the entrepreneurial world is really gender agnostic. It doesn't really care that whether you're a man or a woman. It's quite gender neutral in that manner. And even when you are working, you don't really favor any genders, right? You give the business to the right person, to the right candidate, irrespective of the gender. So we would like to just hear a few parting words from all of you. Neha, beginning from you, how can we develop a sense of sisterhood and still and encourage more women to not really get into the entrepreneurship, but develop these entrepreneurial skills that we just talked about to succeed, to lead, become leaders wherever they are, in whatever system and organization they are. So please give us a few parting words, few parting tips about developing a sisterhood, support structure.
So actually, Ranshi, you mentioned it right. A lot of the like the glass ceiling actually exists from us internally rather than externally. We as women have might have some doubts around how we will be able to do this versus that. But if you look at it, in undergrad, everyone is competing, in the same examination, cracking the same things, and then coming up to there. But from there, when you jump into your career, you see actually a difference in how women just take their career so seriously themselves versus externally. So I think you've actually actually addressed it pretty well. What I would say is that having platforms like these, where you are able to share some of the things, or people are able to ask some of the questions, that is super helpful. I have actually realized that just having a good set of peer groups, right? And right now, I think you have like a WhatsApp group for all of these, right? WhatsApp group for female founders, or WhatsApp group for any of these networks. Just having even small things like this is super helpful, because a lot of the doubts that people are having, and just to get people's thoughts and opinions and the recommendations for that is super helpful. And so, my thought would be, don't think that you are, you might be having as a female, leader, you might be having facing a lot of issues as you enter into your career and as you grow over there. But don't think that you are the only one. A lot of other people have also faced similar issues. So just reach out to people, talk to them, how they have addressed it. I think that is, that has realized, for me personally, that has worked super. So I would also encourage that for a lot of students who are just jumping into their professional careers now, to do that.
Thank you so much, Neha, for that. Well, then I'm going to come to you. This gender agnostic word is one of the terms that I picked up from one of your interviews. And you said that, having entrepreneurial programs, especially for women, they are already existent. But in real world, it doesn't really matter whether what gender you are. So what would you tell us? How can we develop a peer-to-peer group, and how can we develop a sisterhood where we are encouraging women to lead?
I think most women, they stop believing in themselves and they don't have the faith. So I can share my own story here. So the point where I got my breakthrough, that point, all my near and dear ones, all the support system around me had crashed. I had two choices, whether to believe in myself or to believe in them. So I chose to believe in myself. That is when, Meera ma'am said, that automatically you see there are other people from the universe that start, coming up and showing up. And then you start believing in yourself, who, are complete strangers, and you start, moving on in that direction. So I think that is one thing. Many women, they want to become entrepreneurs, but they don't know how to scale up. I think that education needs to be imparted. That's the lack of education, which, and having that more networking groups where we can open doors for each other. So typically, if you see, when a few males interact, they start, immediately opening doors for each other. But when it comes to us women, we get skeptical, and we don't really open doors for each other. So I think that's what we need to encourage more. And create this whole drive where we can have this each other opening doors for each other and giving them that network, that education where what is lacking, and helping them believe in themselves, that like I mentioned before, that once they have families, this automatically, with children around, there is focus goes over there and not in their own talents and skills. If you look at organizations also, many corporates, we don't actually help each other to recognize our skills. Like how many of us from, if we go back to our childhood days or our corporate days or our college days, have just gone to one of our friends and said, hey, you have this skill. Maybe you should pursue this. None of us. So when we start doing that, you could be having some writing skills. I could be having some other skills. When we help each other recognize those, because sometimes we as individuals don't know what our skills are. And we forget about it. We forget about our talents. So I think when the mind is very, very centered and is, when we are just totally focused on ourselves, I think that's when we realize our own talents. And by that time we realize, okay, I was always right. I'm on the right direction, so nothing is wrong with me. It's just people around us have to say something or the other, or have to do something or the other. Like Neha mentioned earlier, there are all kinds of people around us. How we, take care of that and not let that affect us and move on, I think that helps us more.
Right. There are a lot of insecurities that women are being inside, and we are seeking that validation from the outside world as well. To do a lot of inner work, which Meera, you are working young women, disabled women, to overcome these physical as well as internal limiting beliefs that they have. So, ultimate word to you, Meera. What would you like to tell us? How can we develop a sisterhood where we are helping women and opening doors, as Vandana is saying, not just closing them, and opening doors for women to enter into more leading positions?
I think it's very simple. If I can just say it in one line, I think all of us have to stop thinking just me, but we have to start thinking we. If you do that, if you stop being just self-absorbed and thinking your challenge is the biggest challenge, but start thinking of the others around you. And if every one of us stopped just thinking me, of course, we have to think of our health, our walks, our meditation, etc. But if we just stop thinking just me, as if we are the center of the universe, and started thinking we, I think we'll build an ecosystem of beauty all around us.
What wonderful words that you just said. That just hits the right mark. I'm going to hand it over to Shreya back briefly because she's going to handle the audience Q&A. Shreya, please tell us if there are some any audience questions, and please moderate that session.
Yes, ma'am. We actually have 2-3 questions from audience. So the first question is for Vandana, ma'am. When it comes to investment, whom should we prefer? Like, should we take help from family or any other investors?
It all depends where your company, at what stage it is. If it is at a too very early stage, if you're just starting, then you can just approach your family and friends. Once you have started rising a bit, then I think you can approach VCs, then PEs, and so on. There are levels to it. So depends on what you're building, at what stage you are, at what level you want to reach out to investors. So if it's an angel investment, it's usually from your own network, family, friends, and relatives.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The next question is for Neha, ma'am. Ma'am, when you said that there are less number of co-founders, women co-founders, so ma'am, is there a way to, it's like, how can we encourage women to join, to make them as our partners or co-founders? They are just lacking that confidence. So what should we do for that?
Yeah, sure. So I think this probably comes from a few angles. So one is basically just the number of sort of women who are thinking about starting their business, who are thinking about that seriously. I think it comes from that funnel. And I think interesting thing what I have realized is that there are right now, even for some of the investors, they actually ask you this question that, how many, for instance, if you are starting any business which is wherein your customer base is also female, then even I've seen these questions coming from investors that, okay, can you get like a female co-founder, which probably, hopefully should also encourage to get some of these numbers up. But I would say, I think just like be gender agnostic, I would say, when you're thinking about, your co-founder, just don't think about, that it's male or a female, but having a lot of examples of female entrepreneurs would probably encourage thinking about people in people thinking about them as equally ambitious, equally career focused, and equally can do that for so many years. So I would say it is probably just a gradual thing organically that it might happen.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we have one more question. For this question is for Meera, ma'am. Ma'am, like how do you think that what do you think that to how much extent gender equality is achieved in rural areas? Because we have seen that girls are lagging confidence to get into entrepreneurship. So can you please tell something about it? How
No,
much?
I think there's a huge disparity over there, and lots of almost every indicator, if you look at it, whether you begin with literacy, education, all digital skills, entrepreneurial skills. I think the gaps are so large. But on the other hand, if you look at the abilities are there. So I think all of us need to design skills to make sure that, they're able to, some of these gaps at least can be reduced. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, we have Shubhangi Thakre, ma'am, and she would like to add something. So, ma'am, I request you to please.
Yes, thank you, Shreya. My name is Shubhangi Thakre. I'm faculty of planning from COEP, and I'm also a member of ISC Cell. So, on behalf of ISC Cell, I would like to thank our three wonderful guest of honors and wonderful ladies who have joined us today for this session on women's entrepreneurship. All the important points, all the important aspects that we have discussed today, mostly putting light on the concept like how to overcome the gender biases at working place, then how to develop sisterhood, because that is a very important aspect, because like many times we feel, at least now being like sisters at working place, we can at least help each other. So yes, that is definitely a very important point that is addressed today. And then other important things like finding our own place in men's world. Yes, that is a huge challenge that we all know, and in our day-to-day working life we actually are facing. Then uncovering women's untamed potential, and many more such points that we have discussed today. It is definitely going to it's not only going to help our female participants, but also our male participants to how to make the working place a cohesive place. So yes, it was a very wonderful and amazing, inspiring and motivating session that we have today. So I once again thank all our guests of honor, Meera ma'am, Neha ma'am and Vandana ma'am, for joining us today. I also I specifically want to thank Jalashri for putting all the important and burning points like on the stage today for discussing. And thank you for the wonderful moderation. It was really amazing to hear from you, and it was really very good, great comparing. Thanks, Jalashri. So yes. I think, yes, over to you, Shreya. So I guess we can conclude today's session. So over to you, Shreya.
Yes, we'll conclude this session. Thank you so much, all the moderators and guests, for such an amazing session. We look for more such sessions and we would love to hear more from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Thanks
you
for
so
having
much
us.
from my
Thank
side
you.
as well for this engaging and insightful discussion. And I really enjoyed moderating it, and I hope the audience have enjoyed it as well. Thank you, Shubhangi ma'am. You put it very rightly, all the takeaways as well. And I also noted down a few takeaways from my side. One is, as you rightly said, women have untapped potential, and we should look at our strengths, that is our moral compass, our high emotional coefficient, good communication skills, and agility. Representation matters, as Neha said, that we have a role to play in this ecosystem, and we might not be at the top, but we can open the door for somebody coming behind us. And ultimate word by Meera: stop thinking just me, it's thinking we. That's concluding from me. Thanks a lot for this session, and I hope you all a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
Jalashri.
Thank you.
Thanks, the panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you.